You ever see a teaser for something less than a minute long, but you know instantly is going to be all you think about for the next 9 months? It's safe to say I feel a certain kinship with Dana Terrace at this point. Granted, I've never said a word to her personally, and I very much doubt she knows I exist. But it's not for nothing that half the people who even watch this channel are around because of her contributions to children's nightmares. And for that, I owe her no small amount of gratitude. So, like the majority of the Owl House fandom, I was bound to pay close attention to anything she did next. And lo and behold, in January of this year, we received the first look at Knights of Guinevere, the latest and first traditionally animated show from Glitch, an independent company behind such other indie darlings as Murder Drones, the Gaslight District, and the Amazing Digital Circus. Speaking of, I really need to get back to that other script I was working on. Although hers is the most prominent name attached to COG, Dana Terrace is not the sole creator this time, sharing the credit with other Owl House alumni, Zach Marcus and John Bailey Owen, two of the most prominent names credited for that show's story and teleplays throughout its run. It's no surprise then that they were the first people that Dana went to with this idea when she first came up with it between the free hours of her last job, which, even from the outside looking in, seemed a pretty stressful period in her life.
Like I come up with any story, I was pissed off one day and this became a cathartic release.
What were you pissed about?
Oh man. A lot.
That's fair.
Look, I don't want to make whatever this video is going to end up being just about how much Disney screwed her and the rest of the Owl crew over, since she stated how she wants to move on and the rest of the internet seems to be doing a fine enough job at making the comparison already. But I will say, even a cursory viewing of the pilot will tell you just how cathartic the whole creative process must have been for everyone involved in that whole mess, giving real Florence Pugh at the end of Midsommar vibes.
Good for her.
At any rate, it's always a treat seeing someone confined, for lack of a meaner word, by the limitations of network TV and a major media conglomerate, break free and go absolute apeshit for their next major project. We've seen it before where a person who cut their teeth on a more mainstream narrative managed to get enough pull to be given a true auteur license and do something really wild. Hell, arguably the best movie of the year is a classic example of this. But you rarely see it done in the realm of animation, especially to this extent. Seriously, if you thought the animation Glitch was capable of for their 3D shows was impressive, they seem to have pulled all the frickin' stops for this one. The backgrounds are grimy and luscious, cyberpunk and dystopian, with so much detail that explains how this world works and how it's gotten to this state, that you can't help but pause at every new frame just to soak it all in. I don't know if I'll include that. Nor can you help but stare in slack-jawed amazement at the fluidity on display. The anime-esque design of the characters feeling right at home alongside the gnarly and emaciated robots that feel like they've stepped out of a twisted Lies of P style reimagining of the Arthurian legend. Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Lies of P lately. Good game. If there's one thing my time with the Owl House did for me as a viewer, it was to help me learn to take my time and appreciate everyone involved in the development side of things. And it certainly helped me recognize more than a few other shared names who migrated along with the big three. And of course, I'd like nothing more than to shout them all out and go on and on about the incredible work they did as, again, it truly takes a village to make even a presentable teaser of this quality possible. I would also love to give individual credits to storyboarders and animators as I did in the past. And perhaps one day I will if I find more development details or I get the balls to actually ask someone involved. But for now, I can have a little fun and speculate on who did what based on my own intimate knowledge of their previous efforts. Learning that Kofi Fiaugame was once again involved as the animation director made it easy to point out several scenes he might have plussed up. And I'm 90% positive I can point out a few scenes Dana Terrace animated herself. Like this one with Guinevere and the kids, and maybe this bit with Frankie on the scrapboat? I don't know, something about the bounciness, I guess. On that note, it's worth mentioning how finely paced the whole thing truly is. Given that this is an independent internet show, they could have made their runtime as long as they possibly wanted to. But there's probably some wisdom in how Glitch has strived to keep the majority of their shows around or under 30 minutes, as one would see on traditional TV, where scenes move along in a relatively snappy manner, and you're given just enough information to glean almost an entire backstory from any of the major players. The same is true for COG's leading players, Andy and Frankie, two childhood friends who seem to have very different personalities, yet gel off each other's common interests and backgrounds. Growing up in an impoverished society, being forced to participate in the same system that chokes the earth and oppresses the poor. A deep understanding and passion for electronics and robotics. We also see the dichotomy in how these two approach this society, where Andy has what appears to be a cushy job above the surface as an engineer for Park Planet, but is utterly drained and browbeaten knowing she's contributing to an industry that's destroying the environment and keeping people like her and Frankie impoverished. Whereas Frankie doesn't seem to have been beaten down by the cold, bitter cynicism that permeates the world below the park, actively aspiring to be an engineer like Andy, unsatisfied in her role as a low-level factory worker and scrapper, but eagerly bouncing wherever she's needed, keeping her idealism by imagining little friends who encourage her more ambitious, if somewhat self-destructive, aspirations. Though we admittedly don't get to see them bounce off each other that much, this dichotomy and unlikely friendship, despite that, promises to be a great emotional core for the show going forward, topped only by the connection they share with the titular princess of the park, Guinevere. Well, more titular princess of the show, you get it. Not long after the first teaser dropped, Dana Terrace seemed to derive some humor in how nobody could figure out what the plot really was. And by the time the first proper trailer released, it was easy to see why she got a good chortle out of it. Though the very first lines is narrated by Guinevere's Eden Regal, whom I only mention by name both because of her own status as a seasoned voice actress, and because I kept mispronouncing it in the last Owl House video I made. Sorry! Present the story as a typical fairy tale, we can immediately see just how twisted it truly is. The princess locked away in a tower, guarded by a possessive and intimidating dragon, awaiting for knights so bold as to rescue her. Though her face is plastered all over Park Planet and the surface world below, with many variations sharing a core memory through magic that allows each one to remember specific guests no matter the version they encounter. We still don't really know that much about her by the pilot's end, and that seems very much intentional. Not only is she a commodity to the girl she appears to be gifted to by the park's founder, but to the entire planet, if not the universe at large. A face to sell merchandise and tickets, offering superficial connections to guests and having a painted smile on her face as she does. Or at least, that's how it seems she was supposed to be programmed.
Thank you.
I brought up a vague Pinocchio reference before, but I can definitely see similar themes of personhood and realness being brought up as the show goes on. And make no mistake, this is definitely getting picked up for a full show. I'll eat my fucking hat if it's not. The most prominent Guinevere is introduced being violently pulled around by her apathetic owner, using whatever passes as her intestines for a leash. Forced to act compliant out of obligation and fear, seizing the first opportunity she can to escape. In the present day, we see what we can only assume is the same puppet, beaten down by time and no doubt other forms of wear and tear, regarded as nothing more than a money chip by Frankie's scrapper boss. The later half of the pilot spent on Frankie and Andy breaking into the latter's lab to try and repair her, first out of a desire to tinker with her robotics, but transforming into something else when Frankie notices something different about this particular Guinevere. Something familiar, and possibly human.
No, she helped us! We have to help her! How?
The theme of autonomy in automatons is always fascinating to me, even in stories where the allegory is not at all subtle or even good. But there's also something to be said about the mere fact that Gwen is purposefully marketed as a princess. Once just a classification of royalty, now marketed out the wazoo to sell all kinds of paraphernalia by Disney, Hasbro, Mattel, Fisher-Price, and every other toy brand under the sun. But even before the age of plastic, princess as a title has always carried a weight to it. The dainty, demure, doll-like prize to be won in nearly every classic fairy tale. Deconstructionist takes on the textbook Princess in a Tower story, emphasizing their own humanity and desires outside the role they were born into, made for, if you will, are also right up my alley. And in just a few scenes and a relatively quick montage in the beginning, showing just how much of an object Guinevere is both to the system and to the people who partake in it. I can only hope that the journey she takes with her would-be knights explores her personhood, on top of the plethora of other invigorating themes they've presented. The commodification of entertainment from the ruling class, the struggle of making ends meet in a system you know is unjust, clinging to the hope that you can make something of yourself, even if the entire world seems against you. On top of that, there's all the background information regarding a blue lung disease, hidden QR codes that lead to even more lore, and so many other secrets just waiting to be found and dissected by thoroughly normal people like myself. All of this and more paints a promising picture for Knights of Guinevere, and shows just how much of a powerhouse independent animation has become. One can only hope the success of this pilot and other pilots and shows like it can inspire other creatives either to tell their own stories, or to break free from the oppressive and unappreciative yokes of the big cats who will toss them aside at barely a moment's notice. But if the past few years have proven anything, it's that we don't live in a fair or just society, and the works of people like Terrace, Owen, Marcus, and all the rest of the COG crew can be easily ignored or exploited by the powers that be, were this show made by more traditionalist methods. I really don't want to end every video like this with a huge rant about the state of animation and how bigger studios take it for granted. But if it weren't for that sad fact, this pilot wouldn't even exist. So please, if you haven't already, and come on, look at you, please go watch Knights of Guinevere. Give the video a like, turn off the ad blocker you most certainly don't use, maybe buy some merch if you can. Barring all that, spread the word, board the hype train. I know my wife in particular has been obsessing over the show since day one, and the pilot did absolutely nothing to quell her thirst. More! And hell, I'm right there with her. While it's easy to say indie animation is the future of the industry, it certainly won't be if we as an audience don't do our due diligence and help the creators along as much as we can. So, my brave knights, let us go forth. Let us ride to Park Planet! No, on second thought, let's not go to Park Planet. It is a silly place.